What you're about to see is our story, and the story of communities, rural Minnesota communities. It's a story of working together, of building health in communities, of adapting and evolving as change hit communities, sometimes in very unexpected ways. It's a story of caring and compassion. It's a story of rural Minnesota communities.
The Blandin Foundation had started an approach to leadership development in the mid-1980s. And in rural Minnesota at that time, there was a lot of stuff happening in terms of local economies that wasn't good. We were in the midst of what was an ag crisis at that time in southern and southwestern and western Minnesota.
We knew we wanted to strengthen rural communities, okay? That was our job as a board. We didn't want to deviate from that mission. It's to strengthen the home community and to strengthen rural communities.
Iron mining was going through one of its down cycles, and again, it was an extreme down cycle. Lots and lots of jobs being lost, communities being impacted in a whole variety of ways.
What's happening to Main Street when they experience their friends, their families, their own livelihood being threatened when the economic crash comes.
One of the things that was clear was the fact that Katherine Jensen understood the end game and wasn't going to waste resources on a whole plethora of activities and program channels.
We had produced what foundation staff do, which is tons of studies and statistics and documents about this incredible need and the devastation on the range. People were hurting. And one of our wonderful, beloved trustees, Henry Dorr, was sitting there surrounded by these stacks of documents and overwhelmed. Clearly, we all were overwhelmed by this potential devastation. And Henry took off his reading glasses very slowly and said, you know, I'll just say one thing. Nothing, absolutely nothing is going to happen here without good leadership. In the early 80s, there was actually still a big debate about leaders are born, they're not made. And so our board, an older group of trustees, was busy arguing right away about, well, leadership. You either got it or you don't. It's as simple as that. So there were a number of people on board that basically then, this idea came up and they said, no, you can't train leaders. Everybody knows that. You can't. And it was an interesting debate.
If we're going to be thinking about leadership, why shouldn't we as a board experience leadership training? And why don't we experience it in what may be the United States mecca for leadership training, the Center for Creative Leadership in Greensboro, North Carolina?
The board decided that, if we really are serious about this idea of leadership, and we're never going to figure out debating it if you can do it or not, let's all go to the Center for Creative Leadership and actually experience it and see what we think.
We went through the entire drill, the entire week, just as if we were preparing to become a military officer of high rank or a CEO of a major corporation.
And it was a national model, very, very effective in its world and in its framework. And it was geared primarily for executives on their way up the corporate ladder.
But clearly, to those of us that had our hearts in community work, we could right away see, oh, this doesn't quite get at the issues our community leaders are facing. It's exciting, it's invigorating, it's very in-depth, it's dramatic, it's life-changing, but it's really missing the boat when it comes to the issues that community leaders are facing.
In a sense, what we had was a framework from CCO and a model we knew that there was things we could take out of it and use, but we were free to create. We were free to add on.
Back in the mid-'80s, when this was all happening, foundations made grants to other people to do these things. So for us to actually keep it in-house turned out to be really important to the foundation, a great decision, and it allowed us to really control the format and be very particular about evaluation and about what was going on. But that was very unusual.
We were invited to create a world-class program to provide experiences for people who would get that no place else in their lives. You know, they didn't work for corporations that were going to send them to Harvard or for the Center for Creative Leadership. These are folks who ran barbershops and farmed and were managers at the elevator, school superintendents. And they came, and our job was to provide them with the best possible learning experience we were capable of.
We frequently say, and we mean it, that all of Mr. Blandin's millions, whether those dollars are stacked on top of each other downtown Main Street, Grand Rapids, or in some vault on Wall Street, accomplish absolutely nothing by themselves. It's when Mr. Blandin's resources meet other people's passion, goals, vision, work, that our resources get to partner and support what somebody else has led.
Well, one of the things that we learned early on is that every community has its own culture. There are no two alike. There are some that are similar, but communities are different. Their culture is different, and I just didn't realize that until we got working with different communities. And I think early on, because we recognized that, we were able to kind of shape the workshops in a way that responded to that culture of that community.
So our first pilot group was just with 20 people just gathered into Grand Rapids into the back rooms of the foundation. And I think some of us had experienced the process and had some confidence in the process from our exposure to the centers thing, or participating or watching it happening. And then a confidence that, yeah, the same process can be provided by other people. And the components come together in something that moves people ahead, engages people, helps people see more of what is possible and what can be done.
One of the very first communities that we served was Big Fork, about 40 miles north of Grand Rapids, and we had a little team of folks come from Big Fork and some from Nashwauk and some from another community. And this was like the second time we had done the program. So they decided to create a concept called Edge of the Wilderness. And for one of the first times in Itasca County, they put together a joint powers agreement. And they started a little golf course, whatever. If you go up to the area now, you'll see signs that say Edge of the Wilderness.
The Edge of the Wilderness is a couple hundred miles, 240 or 50 miles north of the Twin Cities. We're isolated in the sense that we're sort of the end of the road.
One of the issues in the Edge of the Wilderness area, which is really an umbrella name that includes the towns of Marcel and Big Fork and Effie, and there wasn't an awful lot of communication, coordination, collaboration among the three town areas.
When we first got together, or got the call from the Blandin Foundation that they'd like to get a group of us together from the Big Fork area, it was pretty much like I think it goes every place else, where nobody's got the time.
We certainly were not a cookie cutter group of people. I mean, you couldn't have asked for a greater diversity sampling out of this community than what we had with the 23 of us. And I think that's the other reason why it kind of worked, is a lot of us, you know, certainly didn't know each other at all when we went.
And one of the biggest things we discovered was that we had two factions in Big Fork that didn't really like each other. And it was sort of holding us from going forward, so we tried to work on that a little bit.
Along the way, we found out that community development was just as important, or maybe more important, than what economic development was. You first have to learn how to get along with yourselves before you can get along with everybody else. So I think that was probably one of the triumphs we had coming out of our Blandin Leadership Group, is to learn how to work with the communities and get people involved in their communities, and identifying the folks that could contribute to the area and make it a better place to live for us.
It was like bringing together a whole bunch of people who really ought to have been friends and companions, and we all had such a stake in what was going on in this area, and we all did it, and then we found out that there were others of us. So in one respect, simply bringing us all together was such a validation to each one of us about what all of us was doing. And in no small part, that there were 23 other people telling you, good job, keep going. The Blandin Leadership Program tells us that arts and culture has to be part of a healthy community. And so we started moving along those lines. So then some more dreams were formulated. And then, without any knowledge about what in the world was ever going to come of it, we all got together and said, let's build a theater.
For me personally, I was kind of shaking my head a little bit, saying, you know, a performing arts and a fine arts center in a community of 469 people, you know, is this realistic? And obviously it is, because it exists today, and it's a very interesting and fascinating story, and it's highly successful.
What we initially tried to accomplish way back in '86, Patty Feld put the cap on when she developed the Edge Center, and people from Marcel and Effie and Deer River even started participating in the plays and the programs up there, and that brought us all together, and I think that's where we're at, and we look forward to having it for many more years.
I think any organization's character and any individual's character comes through when times are tough, when there's a challenge. It's easy to be positive and optimistic and nice when you have a tailwind and everything's going well. And it's more challenging, less fun, more work, more serious when things aren't going well. In the mid-'80s, as you know, there was a horrendous labor strike in Austin. And horrendous in the sense that it impacted not just the plant, but it impacted the community.
They were going through some very difficult times, which we all read about in the newspaper. The Hormel, the strike, the incredible tension going on between the workers at Hormel, the union, the management, the political structure of Austin was being challenged at all times.
There was violence in the street. It became a media event. The National Guard was sent down. Communities within the community were divided. Families were divided. Churches were divided. Kids couldn't play together anymore, depending on which side of the strike your parents were on.
during the strike, there was probably the schools and the churches were about the only haven that to get away from the tension. I mean, tremendous tension.
People weren't really proud of the community, you know, kind of focused on the strike and everything that was going on there. And there was a group of us who started meeting and trying to think of something that we could do to kind of turn things around. I.J. Holton at that time was the president of our Hormel Foundation, and he's the one who was the person from Austin who talked with the Blandin people and helped to bring it about.
When you go through an experience like we did that lasts over a year and starts affecting the lives, I think you, first of all, I think you have people who want to see it come back and want stability and want that to happen. And I think that Blandin was a catalyst to making that happen, and that was a very important ingredient in terms of the recovery and bringing people back together again so that we can start with the positive things.
I'm not sure how it was derived, but it was decided that the whole group of 24 would ride together on a bus to the retreat site. Which to me, which I look back right now, is, yeah, they were ready to ride the bus together.
And what came off of that bus were citizens that you could read in their face was apprehension, anger, tension, stress that had been going on for several months.
So we had folks who were on the picket line and folks who had arrested people that were on the picket line. We had folks from a whole variety of perspectives. It quite honestly was an experiment on their part. It was an experiment on our part. And it was a gut-wrenching retreat.
I was a part of that first group that went, and I didn't realize at the time how carefully people were chosen, you know. And one of the reasons that I mention that is the people who chose the people to go on to the Blandin Community Leadership Program specifically looked at management of the Hormel Company and leaders in the labor group, and chose especially a couple of key individuals to go and be a part of our group.
And I remember talking to an individual who worked with the plant there, and he was in the leadership program, obviously, and he was talking about the devastation of that strike. And he was in management, and his brother was in labor, and the two of them, in terms of their family, were literally ripped apart because of that strike. And I've talked to him since, you know, a few years following, and he talks about the change that has happened within the community because of the healing process, that by developing the capacity of leadership, that healing process can take place. I think Austin now has gone through the program maybe 5 times, maybe more. And we had a chance to experience a whole room full of graduates from that program last September when we had our retreat and spent a couple of days in Austin to actually experience the impact that the leadership program has had on that community.
In the fall of 1990, I went to the Blandin, and so that opened up my mind as far as the possibilities, you know, as far as the networking and so forth, and the challenges that we could do bigger things than what we were capable of, or thought we were capable of.
It was an incredible experience for me personally, and I think that you would find that with almost everyone going to the Blandin Leadership Program, that they would talk about how it affects the community, but then most assuredly how it affects you personally.
I remember that week that we spent together, it changed a lot of people's life. It changed my life completely to think about before you make a decision or before you talk in front of people what you have to say. you know, because you're talking about people are going to take you seriously when you talk to them.
It was great to have not only the exposure of healthy community concept, but just the networking, just to feel like, wow, we as community, and Blandin really has invested and sent 6 cohorts, I believe, from Austin. And it shows, you know, you bump into people and you can recognize traits of those of us who've been exposed to a whole week of Blandin and Brainerd, and it's beautiful. I think it's a plus, certainly it's a plus.
The foundation received too much credit and too much thanks. Thank you for the foundation. The foundation didn't save a hospital or pass a school bond referendum. What the foundation did was convene 20 or 24 people from a community that said, after 5 days, we need to save that hospital. A different community said, we need to pass that school bond referendum. A different community said, you know, we need to build a skate park for our youth.
Interestingly enough, if you look back at the old pictures, and if you look at the training staff, it was kind of a white male group of people. Catherine Jensen surely would be our exception, you know, in terms of developing the curriculum and the training. But basically, it was pretty white.
You have to remember, when we started this program, our concept of diversity was having 4 kinds of Lutherans. You know, we didn't know anything about this. You know, I was as exotic as they came because I came from a family where we cooked with garlic, for heaven's sakes.
Ethnic diversity has, you know, selectively hit different communities in a tremendous way and hasn't affected many communities that much at all. There's one county in southern Minnesota that has a higher percentage of ethnic minorities than any county in the state of Minnesota. You know, and so that's, you know, that's just an extraordinary thing. So we try to go where the issue is an issue, and help people with the you know, with the movement of immigrant populations becoming and new populations or first-generation populations really becoming what they want to become, which is fully engaged and successful in their own, with their own cultural filters on.
Up until, you know, the mid-'80s, Willmar was kind of a sleepy, conservative Scandinavian community. Didn't change very much over the decades. And then the demographics of the city began to change in the 80s and certainly in the 90s and continues today.
I would say if there's something that characterizes the program now, it is an intentional effort to be inclusive. Rural Minnesota has changed, and rural Minnesota has evolved, and we are a very mixed population. As we look at those obvious senses of diversity, and we deliberately seek them out. I mean, when we go into a community, we will say, bring us to all parts of your community. And if we know, for instance, that there are certain kinds of ethnic populations in that community that don't seem to be represented at first in our recruitment process, we will deliberately seek them out. And we will bring them to the table, and we will engage them through that retreat and those 2 workshops. Then another aspect of that, if I may, is moving deliberately into programs under the umbrella of the Blandin Community Leadership Program that really do work within identifiable areas of diversity. And one is our Blandin Reservation Community Leadership Program, which is meant to serve all 11 reservations within the state of Minnesota.
The way in which it was done. When I came on the board, the leadership program was fledgling. It had started and it was starting to get a good reputation statewide. I saw networks that developed between alumni from different rural communities. And one of my concerns was, why aren't Indian people that are actually in some of the communities that we'd selected participating? We decided then we'd take a little change from that. What would it be, is there a possibility that we could develop a separate leadership program? Initially, let's try this for American Indians, for these specific communities that have so many more challenges, I think, than most communities do. The foundation went along with this. Wow, I thought this is pretty risky business for a foundation to say that they're going to invest so much into this population with such great need in a separate, yet equal but different type of approach. And that's how it started.
That kind of thing, and setting up new projects that will benefit our band and our community.
After the second cohort, they saw some cultural things going on with the participants themselves. So at that time is when they they established the American Indian Advisory Board to the foundation. Since then, there has been suggestions by the advisory board and by the participants to incorporate different cultural aspects of our culture, not only the Ojibwe, but the Dakota people of Minnesota.
Spirituality is a very big part of the program because the people that have come through saying, we have to have ceremonies. For Indian communities, when you gather together, any opportunity, you bring in the drum, you have song, and you have prayer. That's part of almost any community gathering we have. It's the way we do business, so we've incorporated that into the program. And it's because the people say, that's our reality. That's our reality.
We are coming here to learn skills, to bring all different types of people in to the table, because everybody has ideas, everybody has opinions and aspirations. And so I think one of the most important parts for Boys Fort this week is that we are going to take these skills back and pull some of the people that aren't represented at the table all the time. And we're going to pull those people in, get their ideas, use their ideas, and hopefully have a better, definitely a more healthy community.
Absolutely great. Absolutely. Good work, you guys. I'm one of the youngest participants, if not the youngest participant here. And when I was first asked to do it, I was a little leery because I didn't really see myself as a leader. And I think that's something that they've hit home this week. Just that, you know, if you don't see yourself as a leader, somebody else has, or the potential to become a leader. I've begun to realize that I do have really great potential to be a leader and a really good leader for our community and bring about a whole new type of change or new projects or just a better life and well-being for our reservation and for our people.
Good morning and welcome to the grand opening of the Boys Fort Community and Government Services Building. Thank you for all coming.
Whether you believe in the Great Spirit or God, or each of us have been given gifts, and I think that some of us have been given the gift of leadership, and we are to use that to the best of our ability. And so that's what I try to do every day.
Obviously, rural Minnesota is going to continue to change. You know, our metro sections change, rural community is going to change constantly. And our program will only be as good as it understands that change and continues to evolve with it. It won't be sudden kinds of things, but to recognize those areas where we have significant issues.
The program originally started out where addressing any kind of regional center was not considered rural, and maintained that for a really very long period of time.
It really became apparent that there were kind of these regional hubs that rural communities relied on to survive and thrive. And so we got an invitation from Mayor Herb Bergson in Duluth to visit with him about the possibility of doing the program in Duluth. And this was the first time we'd really had an invitation from a large community.
Huge change has come as a result of these cohorts, the 5 that were, and I know it was an experiment with a city of this size.
And Duluth must be unique in the number of people that went through the training in a very, a tight period of time, where we really do speak that common language today. We have a shared approach to problem solving, and it isn't obvious, but I think it underlies much of what we do as community leaders today.
The regional centers are becoming more and more important as communities that provide the access to a lot of services and a lot of resources that the outlying communities really need to tap.
One of the things we talked about was city government here and the systemic changes that needed to be made, leadership that needed to be made, and we got organized. And I think it had a huge impact on the elections that followed and the entire political environment here.
At the conference, one night a small group of us came together and started talking about the future of our city and what needed to happen. And that was the first time that I had a conversation with anybody about the possibility of running for mayor.
Political side with our elected representatives so that we are at least covering.
What's really important here? What are the broader principles? What are the big ideas and tackling our biggest challenges? And so as more cohorts went through the Blandin Leadership Program, you saw that this new energy coming into town, and community leaders that themselves went through this rebirth and were looking at the city and the issues that we're facing Duluth in a new light.
What's good for a region is good for Duluth. What's good for the Iron Range is good for Duluth. And frankly, the reverse is true as well. What's good for Duluth is going to be good for the greater region.
This kind of leadership, which builds relationships, and that's what it's about, and respect, I think contributes to a community's ability to change paradigms and to work together for the common good. Understanding that if you do that, there are huge benefits and big dividends for everybody, not just one segment. And I think Blandin has played a solid role in moving Duluth forward.
One of the results of the Blandin Community Leadership Program is it's what's called a going forward group or a moving forward group. There were 6 individuals as a member of our group, and we knew at that point in time we wanted to focus on active and non-motorized transportation. And that was also one of the areas that I knew that Fit City Duluth was going to be focused on.
Thinking about the process we might go through?
Nothing is really going to get done at the community level by yourself or by 1 or 2 organizations. It's about collaboration. And even deeper than that, it's about relationships.
We're going to figure out what this group's #1 priority should be by kind of going.
Pot of gold at the end of the rainbow is healthier residents. What does that mean? That means a healthy culture so that our residents can live healthy lifestyles easily.
We went through with Duluth, and it was just a great experience and really kind of a poster child for us for doing rural regional hubs.
The theory that the program works on is that if you can get a critical mass of folks who are able to work together in a community, you're actually going to make some changes in that community. So the change starts with the individuals that we have here, and the change starts with the relationships that those individuals have.
The best resource of a community is its people. It's not its money, it's not its location, it's not all those other things, albeit they play a part. But the essence of this program is those people that sustain, maintain, and leave a legacy for future generations in their community.
Storyline, if you will, in the community leadership program, the story of the community leadership is about human capacity and hope. You know, at the heart of it, it's about recognizing the gifts and the capacity of human beings and communities. And it's about the power of not just being hopeful, but having the courage to act hopefully.
And when we start talking, how do we address it? How do we address our helplessness? How do we address our offense? How do we address our mistakes? Yeah, there's where hope leads us on, pushes us on, pulls us on, helps us to offer the hand together. And we move forward, but never alone. There's the hope. We're not alone.
Wouldn't it be wonderful if everything that we did, or every institution that we had, or every program that was developed became known because it did good, because it did the right thing? And I think, I just, in my heart, I believe that's what the program does. It does good, and its heart is in the right place.
Well, the first 25 years is just the beginning of the journey. And we would hope that in the next 25 years, we will stay just as current, just as relevant, just as flexible, and evolve with the communities so that we are always right there with them, working shoulder to shoulder with the leaders of the community and addressing communities as they change.